So, I was going to make a video for today talking about the complexities of Path of Exile 2 and how I feel like the game is more punishing than it is fun in comparison to other games that offer a more fun but also have punishing mechanics, right? And I was going to make that video for today, but then out of nowhere, Path of Exile on their Twitter said, you know what? We got some news that's going to address a lot of people's complaints, and boy, have they addressed some of those complaints. So let's sit back, relax, get ourselves a Poland Spring. Let's look at the drones in the New Jersey sky. I don't know what's going on over here. A bunch of drones. If you're going to pop off and pack me up, do it quickly and do it swiftly in Minecraft. Much love to you. And let's lock it in. Editor, let's switch to it. So, with the patch notes of what they are addressing for today, it seems like for their gameplay features, we're going to read off everything that they're saying here. Like we mentioned last week, we'll be adding the capacity to fast travel between checkpoints within the area, as well as adding many more checkpoints to those areas, generally at all entrances and exits to the areas, meaning if you find those first, you'll be able to instantly travel to them to continue exploring. So what this basically means is that any checkpoint that you found in the campaign, going through, the acts and stuff, through any point you are on the map, you can just fast travel to any other ones, which I think is very, very, very nice, because I'm going to be honest with you, as much as I love the graphic fidelity in the game, looking at the overhead models and exploring and, finding small little things I haven't seen before, but I've basically seen everything already through, both regular campaign and cruel campaign, I don't want to continuously have to run into a dead end. And I feel like the maps, we all know this already, are just way too big. So this is a much, much needed fix. I still think they need to reduce the map size overall, but if they decide to make a lot of fast point travels, then that could address the issues, but we'll see what happens in the long run. I'm sure they might reduce some of these map sizes, come a couple more patches, and things might change for the long run before the official release. So I'm just very happy that they are just making this change. I think it's much needed because, listen, walking around or running around, no matter what, if you have movement speed in your boots and just running into walls, that's not fun. That's frustrating. It's not anything that's intuitive design. It's kind of more of a inconvenience more than anything. That's not good design. So I'm happy they are changing that. They also mentioned that they're making passive point respecking cheaper at higher levels. It had a relatively aggressive curve, getting more expensive with character level. They flattened that curve so it doesn't exponentially grow as much, and this should generally result in approximately 40 to 50% less gold costs for respecting between the start, middle, end game progression. This is so good. This is so good. You guys have no idea. And if you do play the game and you are, part of it, then you actually have an idea if you're obviously at the end game or doing maps, and then sometimes you just want to respec and go into a different portion of the tree to try different things out, see if the results change the, magnitudes of the battle by trying a different build, right? Whether you're doing maps or trials or, you're in the cruel part of the campaign. This is just really nice. And even for people early on, like if they just want to change their stuff and they don't like really the builds that they're going with, this is just a good thing to do. I really, really like that they are listening to the player base because, dude, like, for me, it was causing about 6 to 7K a respec. That's a lot of damn gold. I'm not going to lie to you. And as much as I love, killing mobs and mobs and monsters, I don't want to have to feel like I have to, throw an arm and a leg just to respec every single time where the game is just so punishing in every single area. I get it. It's Path of Exile 2. It's a hardcore game for, a niche, community of players that like games to be extremely daunting and hard, but does every single portion of the game have to be as hard as respecking? I mean, come on, let's settle down. Let's tune it down a little bit, and I don't think people mind that. And maybe eventually, if they even have like a really rare currency where it offers a full respec, but it's like a really rare thing to find in the game, then who knows? Maybe the sky's the limit with them and how they want to really test the system out and see if this is the best way of going about it. But I can appreciate a 50% cut, in my opinion. I think that's a pretty dope and badass. For the Trial Second, they said players were finding the Trial Second particularly frustrating and close range, so they reworked on how much honor damage scales when in close range, as well as fixed an important bug that was causing players to take far too much honor damage from the damage over time. So they said honor damage now scales down based on the distance to enemies, so when you're in close range, you'll take 35% less honor damage, tapering off as you are farther away from the monsters. They also fixed a bug where dot damage over time was 3 times as much as damage the honors intended, and they fixed the bug where the honor resistance was only applying 2/3 of that damage type. And they said it was confusing for them as well. So this is something that I didn't even really notice, but I guess over time I kind of realized that the honor damage really just did suck overall, and any little minor inconvenience would take a good chunk from you no matter what. So yeah, I mean, honestly, my issues with the Trial of Second Miss is that I just feel like the system in place, I think, can use more of a rework. I know down the line they'll probably do more fixes to that system, and maybe they are not too happy where it is right now. Maybe there'll be some severe changes as the game keeps progressing, with the weeks and months on time to come before the release. But I think this is something that is much better than it was before, because now it gives players an opportunity, especially people that are not so reactive to the game, and they're just new players, a first time being a part of an ARPG as well, and trying Path of Exile 2 for the first time. It gives them a little bit more fair of a chance to go through the Trials of Second Miss, get their ascendancy points, and not really feel like an overburning of difficulty, which I think is a major problem in Path of Exile 2, right? And they also addressed a couple things with skitter golems no longer using basic attacks, they just explode, they said. They also said that the Serpent Clan's burrow and ambush attacks now have an improved visual telegraphing and cannot be used from far away, and that the volcanoes created by Rattle Cage's Fissure Slam now last half the duration. Now, the one thing I want to mention in there is visual telegraphing, because I think this is something that they have to address, hopefully sometime in the future, but I think visual telegraphing is one part of the problem, with the camera being number 2 of the problem. And what do I mean by that? I think that the camera is too zoomed in, and I think a lot of other content creators have said this already too. I think the camera needs to have a setting in the actual game settings that you could move the threshold from 0 to 100 or 20 to 100 or whatever it is, so we could push back this field of vision, because I think the visual telegraphing is one part of the problem, but the camera being so zoomed in on the player is another part of the problem. So I'm hoping that they address the adjustments of moving the max FOV in and out into the future of the next week or so, or who knows how long it'll take. I think that would be something better for the player to be able to zoom out a little bit further. That's just my personal opinion, so we get better telegraphs attacks no matter what. But besides that, let's get into the final part of this video, which I want to talk to you guys about today. And that is the endgame and monster balance. Generally, the balance in the endgame maps were more punishing than intended, what they said. So we toned down the damage numbers in ways and disabled a certain on-death effect where the telegraphing was not as clear as it should have been. Basically, what they said is that maps no longer have an additional elemental resistance penalties, inherently implying at tier 6 and tier 11 or higher maps. It is now consistent across all of the endgame. Chaos damage now also scales less aggressively over the endgame, as well as critical strike damage from monsters now dealing 40% less bonus damage. They also said that they lowered the baseline monster density of breach encounters, primarily by reduced frequency of the elite monsters appearing. They've also disabled the volatile crystals modifier, and then they also have made the purple explosive crystals created by the volatile plants modifiers on rare monsters now deal significantly less damage. And then finally, the siphon flash charge modifier on monsters now drain 10 times less flash charges per second. This was unintentional, draining way too many charges from their end of what they mentioned. These changes will basically generally result in an endgame that is much more survivable than before and will continue to address problematic cases as they arise. I think these changes for endgame are extremely, extremely good. To be honest with you, endgame was hard as it is, going through the tier maps and really testing out your build to its fullest potential, but then having to deal with a lot of the BS that comes with it, with the punishing things that were going on with these mobs overall, and they are addressing this stuff as we keep going, and they are realizing that the game doesn't need to feel overbearingly punishing all the time, and that it is an RPG and players can have fun with their builds and feel they are exploring the creativity of trying a multitude of things out and seeing what works for them and having fun with it. And it's not all about just only nerfing the player base of how much fun they're having, but really looking at their game as a whole in a nutshell and saying, all right, we should make this game a little bit more fair in certain places and realize our mistakes when we have to own up to it. And I think that's what they're doing in this patch, is by owning up to their mistakes and issues they have noticed with a lot of the end game testing, and especially the testing within the trials, and also the gameplay features of what they mentioned overall. I think these are W changes in the long run, and I think this can really progress towards a better game for Grinding Gear Games. And this is what I was going to talk about in the video that I wanted to do initially, was basically saying that I really feel like that they were heading in a direction where it just was adding non-stop punishing things to really cause roadblocks and minor inconveniences rather than some type of solid challenge to overcome, to add awareness and to add a sense of fulfillment for the accomplishment of defeating something, and feeling the reward from that, and getting through the campaigns and getting to the trials and getting to the end game, where I feel like in other games that that have punishing things but are still accomplishing and feel enjoyable, like, Elden Ring or Monster Hunter World or just the Monster Hunter franchise in general, or games like, Hades or Hollow Knight, where a lot of these games that are mentioning, right, they offer a sense of progression. Like, yeah, they are cruel when they have to be, right? And the bosses, they will kill you, they will kick your ass, but you learn from these things. You learn their move sets and how to dodge them and how to, correct your dodges with the frames and stuff of that nature. You also get better armor and better gear, and there's a sense of reward after defeating the boss or, mini boss that you are fighting, that will lead to adding something to your character to play around with, that make you incentivize trying a different build and trying things out to test in the woodworks of what the possibilities of what you can do within those games. And I think that's what makes those games so great, is because there's just a freedom of expression to do whatever the hell you want and try stuff, or come back at a later time, level up a little bit more, and then try it again. Rather than in PoE 2, I feel like it does offer that, but there's so much RNG to it when it comes to obviously getting the correct rolls and the gear that you really need to, hope for, that are good for your character. Otherwise, it's just, scrap, right? And then on top of, like, the issues they had before making all these changes for today, the maps being just way too much to explore, the respec cost being just way too high, having issues with trials being ridiculously challenging for no reason after you do your first 4 ascendancy points more than anything, because the first 2 trials initially, like, the original trial and then the ultimatum trial, the first 2 ones that you do off the rip, they're kind of a joke, but then after that it's like really just ramps up in difficulty for like no reason. And then that's on top of like getting to the end game, which there was issues and bugs there as well. So they even addressed a lot of like their issues and bugs that they are currently fixing, and they have a lot more to do to make this game fully fledged out, to make it where they want it to be. Because I think Path of Exile 2 has the potential to be the best ARPG ever, hands down. And this is coming from a person who loves Diablo 2, who thinks Diablo 2 is the pinnacle of ARPGs and was the cream of the crop. And I think this game has the potential to be the best ever. It really does in the ARPG category. But I just think they need to continuously making sure that they are standing by the player when it comes to, getting this game in the sense of respecting the player's time no matter what. Other creators have mentioned this before, and I'm mentioning this as well, because I think it's the key thing to realize that your player base is what is making your game popular in the first place, and without your player base you have nothing. And if it's unanimous that your player base is agreeing to something, whether it's the trials being too hard, the map system, after a certain point just being ridiculous, mobs doing a crazy amounts of damage, random one-shots, the clusters of stun duration and body blocking, the telegraphing and how poor that can be sometimes, especially with the issues of the camera, FOV and stuff of that nature. These are a lot of things that they are, addressing and still have to address and further make improvements on. So I personally think that in the long run, PoE 2 is going to be an amazing game. I just think they're taking it week by week once again, and I'm very happy with the patch notes as for today. I think this is extremely an awesome thing that they are doing, and I'm very much looking forward to the future of where Grinding Gear Games has to go. But that is basically it for the video. Much love, amigos. I hope you guys enjoy everything that you saw today. Leave a like, a comment, a subscribe, why don't you, below, and we'll go from there. Right now I'm playing my, my Lightning Sorceress build. It's been really fun. I'm thinking about making a Ranger build and having fun with that, and then maybe making a Monk after. So maybe leave me know in the comments below what class you think I should play next, and maybe I'll talk about my build or my guide video about my Lightning Sorceress if you guys want to see that. It's pretty cool. I've been doing maps recently, so been having a real fun time and just, ripping through mobs and stuff of that nature. So much love, those amigos. I will catch you on the next one. I gotta stop talking because I'm gonna keep stuttering, because I've been stuttering all day long. So keep on keeping on, all that good stuff, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Arizona green tea, and no, this is not piss. Settle down, you freaks. A little sippage on aisle 3. Okay, maybe that's piss.